Good evening, Polk County and surrounding county voters. I'm Ellis Moose, Vice President of the Polk County Progressive Democratic Caucus. Welcome to tonight's forum. Before I introduce our distinguished moderators and our outstanding candidates, I would like to recognize the efforts put in by the members of our caucus who helped make this event possible. Our caucus president, Jose Garcia, the chairman of the committee that dedicated months to tonight's event, Mr. Jim Roach. Our technical director is Colder Roach, and the committee members, Dorothy Schwartz, Phil Brinker, and David Jones. We also wish to recognize the efforts of all of our sponsoring Polk County clubs and caucuses and the Polk County DEC, who promoted this event and provided many of our questions for tonight's candidates. We are sending a special note of encouragement to Janice Stapleton, our treasurer, and Bill Quinlan, our secretary, who are experiencing some health issues. We wish them the best. There will be two one-hour sessions this evening. Our first state and county candidates, and then promptly at 7:45, our candidates for U.S. Congress will take their turn. During our brief intermission between the sessions, the chair of the Polk County Democratic Executive Committee, Kathy Sutherland, will share a few thoughts and introduce a video by the Polk County Supervisor of Elections, Lori Edwards, of the facts of voting by mail. We are particularly honored that our forum is moderated by two of Florida's leading political experts, the distinguished Dr. R. Bruce Anderson, Associate Professor, Political Science at Florida Southern College, and a political analyst at Hall Communications, and a columnist in Lakeland Ledger. And Mr. Bill Rufty, former Ledger of Lakeland columnist, a Center of Florida political correspondent for the St. Peter's blog and Florida politics. Bill covered the Lakeland city government for 30 years as both a daily city government reporter and later as a political reporter and editor. We welcome and thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your expertise with us tonight. Now, a few brief ground rules for tonight's event. We are on a tight timeline. Each candidate will be allotted 1 minute to introduce themselves and tell us why they are running. They will be allowed 1 minute to respond to each question they're asked. At the conclusion of each session, they will then be allowed a 2-minute period to conclude with a wrap-up of their candidacy. Our chair, Jim Roach, and his crew will monitor the time limits and will be very strict in upholding these limits. Candidates will not be allowed to go over their time limit and steal time from their opponents or other candidates. And now welcome to our Democratic candidates for state offices. Mr. Chris Cause, State House District 39. Jan Barrow, State House District 40. Jared West, State House District 41. James Davis, State House 56, Bob Doyel, Polk County Commission, District 3. And with that, I would turn the floor over to our moderators, Dr. Anderson and Mr. Rufty, who will offer each candidate 1 minute to introduce themselves. I hope you enjoy this evening. Thank you for joining us, Bruce.
How are you?
I've been good.
I think Bill is expecting the camera to be turned on remotely. But maybe we can get underway if you like. Each candidate, as I understand it, each candidate is given 1 minute for an opening statement. And we will start with Chris Cause.
Very good.
He's right there.
And I'll see you all at intermission.
Okay, very good. Go for it, Chris.
Hi, everyone. I guess I'm on here. My name is Chris Cause, and I am running for state representative in District 39. I'm a father. I'm a history teacher at a juvenile detention facility, and I want to make my community better because historically, that's what it means to be a progressive. The progressive era came about in the first 20 years of the 20th century when Americans wanted to improve society and make government more honest, efficient, and democratic. Progressives believed government could fix problems, but first, government itself had to be fixed. The results were child labor laws, direct primaries to choose party candidates, the 17th Amendment so people could choose their U.S. senator directly instead of state legislature, and women finally earned the right to vote. Do those ideas sound that progressive now? Instead, now we get hung up on labels. 100 years later, government needs to be fixed so we can do some good again. We need to break the one-party rule that has shaped Florida for a generation and fix education, expand healthcare, and end discrimination, and build solutions for crippling traffic brought about by runaway growth in this area. If that makes me strongly progressive, then I'm Chris Cause, strong progressive.
Thanks, Chris. Jan Barrow, you have a minute to introduce yourself and tell us what you're running for and why we should elect you.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Jan Barrow, and I'm a Democratic candidate for State Representative, House District 40, better recognized as Greater Lakeland. I'm here to ask for your vote. I'm running to give the people a voice in Tallahassee. For 20 years, those in control have gutted our schools, suppressed our voters, poisoned our water, reduced Medicaid and vital services for the underserved, and all while providing tax cuts through loopholes to the affluent and large public schools. They forgot that they work for the people. I ask you, are you better off today? Is Florida better off today because of those in power? The statistics that are going on. If you want someone in Tallahassee that will fight for you, for Lakeland,
it's not coming back on. Who in the hell cut me off to begin with?
go to janbarrow.com to get involved.
Hang in there, Jan. Okay, we only have the two of you so far in the camera array. So I'm going to go to questions for you guys. My first question is for Chris and for Jan, and let's reverse the order this time around. What is your opinion of Governor DeSantis and the Florida Department of Health's response to the COVID pandemic? What steps can strengthen public health services in Florida? Jan, you have the floor.
I'm deeply disappointed in the COVID response. I think that we could have done a better job, maybe take more measured steps before opening. And frankly, I think we need to enforce mask wearing across the state. Nobody's going to come back to Florida and visit, which our number one industry is tourism, unless they feel
The
safe.
camera button.
If you drive around and you look
Test
around,
your
everybody's
audio and video. And then there is a place that says continue to webinar.
So anyway, I'm disappointed in it. I'm disappointed in Governor DeSantis's handling and the approach to the COVID pandemic. And I'm deeply sorry for the people who have lost lives and their families. It's affected us all just terribly, and we should have had better.
Okay, same question for you, Chris. What is your opinion of Governor DeSantis and the Florida Department of Health's response to the COVID pandemic? And what steps can strengthen public health services in Florida, Chris? Okay, it could be that he cannot hear me. Jared and James, you both joined us. Can you both hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, Jared and James, you each have 1 minute to introduce yourselves. And
Yes.
We'll start with Jared, if you would, and then we'll go to James. So Jared, you have 1 minute to tell us all about yourself and what you're running for and what
I don't
you
hear
care.
anything.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jared West. I'm running for state representative in House District 41, which is Winter Haven, Haines City, Davenport areas. I'm proud to be the Democratic nominee and progressive candidate for this district. I grew up in Northern Indiana and moved to Florida in 2012. I've worked for Atkins Global Engineering and Walt Disney World Resort, and also did contracting work with the United States Small Business Administration. I have also previously served as the District 2 Chair of Indiana Young Democrats and president of a not-for-profit that worked to fund rehab for those with opioid addictions. My husband and I have just celebrated our 4th wedding anniversary. I was the only openly gay male in my hometown, and I had to learn real quick to be a fighter. And fighting is exactly what I'm going to do in Tallahassee. I'm going to fight to end our horrible food insecurity issues, where in fact nearly 25% of Polk County's children do not know where their next meal will come from. I'm going to fight to fix our affordable housing crisis. I'm going to fight for our beautiful lakes, forests, and waterways, and I'm going to fight for our public school teachers and students who are severely underpaid and don't receive the resources they need due to budget cuts and ongoing systemic dismantling of the public school system. Send me to Tallahassee and I will fight for you. Once again, my name is Jared West, and I'm looking forward to participating tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jared, and happy anniversary. James Davis, could you give us a 1-minute synopsis? Mr. Davis?
Thank you to the moderator, and also thank you to County Progressive for my invite. My name is James Davis, and I'm running for State House 50. I'm not your typical politician. I'm a priest, fighter priest, if you will. What that is that as your representative, whatever the concerns are, I will address them with truth, with a moral compass, and with clear, woke consciousness as my guide. I'm here as a sweat equity activist fighting against social equity and for all kinds fighting better. I've always fight for better livelihoods and safe, healthy planet for all. Again, my name is James Davis. Thank you.
Thank you, James. We sure appreciate it. Chris, can you hear me now? It seems not. We'll come back. We'll circle back to questions that we haven't been able to answer because of technical issues. Jared and Jan, I'm going to start with Jared on this one. How would you improve access to broadband internet so parents and children have an alternate way to continue their education at home if they don't feel comfortable returning to public schools? The basic central question here is, how would you improve access to broadband internet, Jared?
Okay, so we need to work with, internet is a utility and it should be treated like it's a utility. Simple as that. So, we need to, just like we do with like electric and water for people who, may not be able to necessarily afford it, is an essential tool that they need. And so we need to, treat internet as a utility and create programs to make it more accessible.
Jan, the same question to you. Would you like me to repeat it?
I think you're asking for broadband services increase. So
How we increase the access?
Yeah, I agree with Jared that it is a utility that we need to get creative. There's been a lot of ideas that's passed around, but it's pretty simple of, increasing the technology, maybe increasing the, and I'm not an expert here, but increasing the towers so that you can actually get access. The other thing is that I've noticed that since all of us are staying home and Zooming, that sometimes the connectivity is less than ideal. And I'm a person that has several boosters in the house. So we also need to improve the technology at the foundation of, where high-speed access is really a reality. We're a tad bit behind in Florida and frankly this nation compared to other developed countries in this area.
Got it.
Well, technical problems solved. I will take the next question, which is for James, Chris, and Robert Doyel. What will you do to ensure that seniors and people with disabilities who have few transportation options be able to get access to emergency transportation, food, and mental health services?
Maybe the same question to Bob Doyel. Isn't he on the?
Yes, we'll move on with Chris first, and Bob, and then we'll come back to James to see if technology has been taken care of.
Can you hear us, Chris?
Chris, the question is to you now. What would you do to ensure that seniors and people with disabilities who have few transportation options be able to get access to emergency transportation, food, and mental health services?
Bill, Chris can't hear us.
Then we'll move to Bob. Bob, same question. Do you need it repeated?
Well, I haven't had the chance to do my opening statement yet.
Oh, well, please combine.
May I do that? Introduce myself. I'm Bob Doyel. I'm a retired circuit judge from right here in Polk County. And I am running for the county commission because my whole orientation in life has been to help people. And the reason for that is I was very, very poor as a child. My father took off before I was born. My mother was pregnant with me and she had 9 other kids. When I was born, there were 10 children living in the same 1-bedroom house without water, gas, or electricity. I was able to get out of that situation because of education. And as a result, I'm not poor anymore. And it allowed me to be a lawyer, a law professor, and a judge. But it never changed my attitude about people. My attitude for people is that we have to help people who can't help themselves, and people who are serving for the government ought to be serving the people, not developers and other business interests. So that's my pledge to you, is that I'm going to be one of the folks who represents you and not someone else.
And to the question, what would you do to ensure that seniors and people with disabilities who have few transportation options be able to get access to emergency transportation, food, and mental health services?
Well, that's something that the county commission can address. And the main approach to that ought to be to increase the availability of the bus system. But instead, the commission has been going the other direction to limit the ridership. And so that's my first approach, and that is let's get more routes and more buses on the street.
And Bruce, I'll turn the next question over to you.
Alrighty. For this question, we really have, let's see, we only have Jared. So we'll ask Jared. What would you do to, I beg your pardon, the Polk County Sheriff's powers have no check by the county commissioners or the community? How would you add checks at the state level?
Okay, well, first of all, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we need to pass legislation immediately to require all police officers to wear body cameras. In addition to that, we need clear procedure in place to hold people accountable for misconduct. And we also need to create a program to better train these officers who are protecting and serving our communities. So that's what I think we should do.
Okay, and James is not back. Chris, are you able to hear yet? We have a number of questions for Chris when he is able to answer. Shoot up a flare when you're able to hear. So.
The next question then, while we're waiting for Chris, is for Jan Barrow and for Bob Doyel. Do you think police departments in America need to be substantially reformed, or do you think instead that some funds for police departments should be used to increase community-based services that will take part of the public safety tasks?
So who do you want to go first?
Oh, I beg your pardon, Jan.
I personally think 911 services should be expanded. I think that, the police need to focus on their core function, which is to serve and protect, and that we need to look at mental health services to help the people who are calling where police are making calls that may not be in their wheelhouse. And I also think that we should look at maybe expanding the community service officers who can handle the less intense calls of, my boyfriend won't move his car or something like that, or there's kids at the end of my street congregating having fun, and they need to be broken up because it's after 8 o'clock or something. So I do think, though, that, and I met with our chief of police the other day, and I'm confident that they really do want to make a difference to this community, and that they are here to serve and protect, but I believe they may be overtaxed in some points.
Thank you. And Bob Doyle, the same question to you. Or do you need to repeat it?
Please.
Do you think that police departments in America need to be substantially reformed? Or do you think that instead some funds should go from the police department to be used to increase community-based services that would take part of the public safety tasks?
I don't think I can answer for all of the police departments in the United States, but I can opine on local police departments, and in particular the sheriff's office. The sheriff in our system is an independent operator. Our county commission can't really do anything about the sheriff's office, except for the power of the purse. And the power of the purse can be used to relieve the sheriff of a lot of the mental health issues that are by default handled at the jail. They're not the best place for treatment. Mr. Cause probably knows this fairly well from his teaching at the jail, and that is, I think, the biggest thing that I can do with the situation as we've come to appreciate it in the last few weeks.
And Bruce, over to you.
Can I try and answer that question from what I'm gathering about it? Just anybody nod their head, and then I'll just kind of start talking. You're absolutely right, Bob. I can attest that every single person that works inside that jail has the students' best interests in mind. They want them to be thriving students, or thriving citizens throughout our community. What I could best guess from your question is that we are putting far too much on our police and sheriff and law enforcement in general. We've done that for years. As we've had problem after problem, we turn to law enforcement to fix it. We call one number to solve all of our law enforcement problems, big and small. We really need to examine other ways, other paths that we could actually solve different problems. If we had maybe different available departments that could be assigned, that could be less lethal in a lot of situations, I think we could tone some of this down.
Thank you.
And now that we have Chris up and running, I'm going to pepper you, Chris, with a couple of questions here that we missed on our way through, so that you have an opportunity to answer them. The first one is, what is your opinion of Governor DeSantis and the Florida Department of Health response to the COVID pandemic? What steps can be used to strengthen public health services in Florida? Were you able to hear me, Chris?
Thank you for that question. Let's see. Governor DeSantis, it seems like routinely is kind of waiting to make a decision on almost everything. We're seeing that even today, where he waited until the day before he had to sign a budget in order to sign the budget. And in a lot of ways, he is actually making what could be close to the right decision, but it seems like it takes him every single available opportunity to make that decision. What we need is strong leadership that decides this is the way, based on the data that we have right now, this is the decision we need to make. What's been difficult is watching him almost get his marching orders from the White House and then come back down and then make a decision for the state of Florida. What we need right now is a mandatory mask order for the entire state. That we don't need to worry about who enforces it. Just the mandate itself sends the message that this is a safer way to operate. And I wish he would. Moving on to the unemployment crisis that we've had during COVID, that's been a complete dumpster fire. And he needs to be personally responsible for that. And we'll hold him responsible in 2022.
Okay, Chris, what would you do to ensure that seniors and people with disabilities who have few transportation options be able to get access to emergency transportation, food, and mental health services? I don't think Chris is able to hear me. Bill, do you want to ask that question and see if he can hear you?
Our lack of transportation throughout Polk County, I mean, public transportation, is almost embarrassing for the rest of the state. What we need is to expand public transportation, including high-speed rail, including expanding Sunrail service from the Point Siena station into Polk County. We need to be able to expand. We need to take people from where they live to a job that they can live and work and make a higher wage. Specifically about seniors and food and mental health. Boy, that's a lot in that question. Okay. It's we need to be able to look at some of our social services. COVID, if anything, is actually allowing us to examine some of these social services that we have and really find out what is working best and the things that we need to improve. As I talked about before in some of the law enforcement, we need to have maybe a separate mental health services line that we could call, or a department that could be dispatched in cases that with trained professionals who could deal with some of those mental health services. As far as having access to food, I would love to be able to partner with so many more of the farmers in the agriculture department or agriculture sector in Polk County, which is thriving. It's 28% of the actual economy in Polk County. We need to be able to work together with a lot of that area and be able to feed locally. And I know we can do that if we actually put a lot more focus on that area.
Bob Doyle, we have a question that we skipped when you were offline as well. What is your opinion of how COVID-19 testing, reporting, and contact tracing has worked in Polk County?
It's abominable. Our county commission has not really addressed the issues of the people. We had $126 million of the CARES program from the federal government, and $2 million of that was used for testing. But the testing was only for first responders, and then if there was any money left over, is for other county employees. Nothing for the folks out here in the community. They've not done anything about contact tracing. They have abandoned any responsibility for masks. There's no reason why Polk County can't mandate a mask now. And as a former circuit judge, I think I could find ways to enforce it.
Okay, I think we're more or less back on track. When James Davis returns, we have questions for him. This is a question for Chris Cause and Jan Barrow. And Jan, we're going to start with you because I know that you can hear me, or you have been able to hear me. Will you oppose taxpayer dollars being used to subsidize private and charter schools that discriminate against LGBTQ plus students and families?
Absolutely. And I think that public money is going toward for-profit and private schools that are not held to the same standards as our public schools is wrong, and it needs to be corrected. I'm not wild about my taxpayer money going to especially religious schools of things that I may or may not believe in. And, there's an issue of separation of church and state there for me. But the question was, will I oppose private and charter schools that refuse to accept our LGBTQ citizens? And the answer is absolutely.
Chris,
I think this is one of the most dangerous and upsetting parts of any education bill that the legislature could have put out. The fact that we are taking public money and giving it to private schools is already egregious enough. But the fact that they are allowed to discriminate against LGBT students and their parents, it needs to be fixed. That would be one of the first things I would want to address in getting into the legislature. It is unfair and abominable. I can't even put into words how disgraceful I find that to be.
This next question is also for Chris Cause and Jan Barrow, and we'll again start with Jan Barrow. What is your position on fracking in Florida, and what is your position on fracking or drilling in our coastal waters?
I will always vote no on fracking in Florida, period. I also would love to see a permanent ban on offshore and fracking on our coastal waters. Florida's #1 industry is tourism. We depend on beautiful waters, and people come to Florida for that. And fracking will ruin this will not only ruin our environment, but on our drinking water and just on and on. But you can count on me to vote no on all fracking and our coastal waters.
Chris?
People in Oklahoma can light their water on fire because of fracking. You can bet that I would be opposed to fracking. And just as if we needed another reason to vote in November, the Trump administration has already let it slip that they are going to expand drilling off the coast of Florida if they win in November. One more reason to make sure you are registered to vote. One more reason to make sure you can get your vote by mail application in. One more reason to come out there and to vote Democrat straight across to be able to prevent drilling off of our coasts and fracking in general.
The next question was similar but far different from the last question about private firms discriminating. This is for Jared West and Robert Doyel, and we'll begin with Mr. West. What is your position on government funding of religious organizations and other entities that are discriminatory towards the LGBTQ community? For example, basically religious-based adoption agencies discriminating against LGBTQ couples who want to adopt.
So hell no. I dare someone to try and discriminate against me or my husband should we decide we want to adopt. I frankly feel that taxpayer money has no business going to churches. Church and state should be completely separated. I don't go knocking on your door telling you what to do with your life. And I don't think that they should be doing that with the government because, Florida and this country are made up of so many different people, so many different types of religions. And there is no place in government for one religion, encouraging so many laws that get passed all the time, like healthcare laws and things like that. So there needs to be an immediate separation of religion and state.
Judge Doyel.
Okay.
Same
That
question.
was a kind of a long question. Could you Repeat it, please.
Certainly. What is your position on government funding of religious organizations and other entities that discriminate toward the LGBTQ community? For example, religious-based adoption agencies that discriminate against LGBTQ couples.
All right. The position that I'm running for doesn't really address that kind of question. But I can tell you that last year I stood at the lectern at the Davenport City Commission and argued for a human rights ordinance. And I believe we need to have a human rights ordinance that prohibits the kinds of discriminations we know happen against the LGBT community. That would include the sorts of things that are addressed in the question, except the county can't control all of those issues, but we can control our contracts. When we issue contracts with private employers, we can require them to do what we expect them to do if they want our money. And that's where I think our focus ought to be from a county level. But human rights ordinance is a good idea as far as I'm concerned, because human rights include everyone, including our gay and lesbian friends and transgender.
Okay. This is a question for Jared. What is your position on the construction of additional tollways?
This is a multifaceted answer here, but in their current form, I am extremely opposed to them because of how destructive they're going to be to the environment and to endangered species like the Florida panther. If they could be built in a way that it's proven they would not be harmful to our waterways and environment, I would then be more prone to support them. In addition to that, I think that, we need to stop building more toll roads, and we need to work on, other infrastructure like public transportation, and things like that. So.
Over to you, Bill.
And this is a question for Robert Doyel. As a commissioner, what will you do to efficiently and cost effectively recycle more of our wastes?
First of all, you have to recognize that in the county, the recycling system is different from the cities. I live in Winter Haven, and we recycle all kinds of stuff. But in the county, the recycling is limited to, if you can get, imagine this, the only plastic that is recyclable is milk jugs. I mean, if it is not of the opaque color as milk jugs, it can't be recycled by the county, or it won't be recycled by the county. Now they have announced a lot of reasons in the past for the kind of limitations that have been placed on the recycle system. But the focus ought not to be only on whether it's cost effective, but what is it doing to our environment? And there are other ways that the issue can be addressed. By example, if they don't allow water bottles to be recycled, and they don't, then stop having water bottles for sale in county buildings. If they're going to make limitations, well, then let's live with those limitations as a government, not just the rest of us folks.
Thank you. Bruce, I believe you have the next question.
I would accept that this is actually a repeat question, I think, for Jared about opposing attempts to change Florida law in order to block LGBTQ couples from being foster parents. There may be subtly different in some way. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that, Jared?
So, at a state level, we can pass legislation to prevent, groups that do that sort of discrimination from, from receiving any sort of taxpayer money. And I would, strongly encourage that. But what I was trying to get at as a whole was just that there needs to be a complete separation of religious organizations and government. So.
And I believe we're still waiting for James Davis. I'm sure
That's correct.
the technical people are working on it. This is a question for Robert Doyel. Specifically, what should the county commission do to address environmental protection issues in Polk County?
Well, there was some discussion of toll roads earlier, and there's not anything the county commission can directly do about the toll roads. But one thing we can do with the platform we have as a public official is to tell the people in Tallahassee, hell no, we don't want your damn road. And that's what they're trying to do, is to put a road through Polk County that will divide it into different parts, interfering with the passage of wildlife. There are lots of things that can be done there that can be stopped, but all we can do as county commissioners is to be loud. Well, I'm going to be loud about those issues, but we can do other things, like we can work with on the development problem and specifically overdevelopment. If you've been down a road anywhere near your home lately, you probably have found that there are lots more traffic there than there was before, and it's maybe to the point of being aggravating to you. That traffic is the result often of overdevelopment, and that same overdevelopment is what interferes with our pristine, what's left of it, county, or what's left to be pristine. And so the very first thing that we should do, in my estimation, is to rein in the development. I'm not opposed to development. We need development to some extent, but we don't need that to be the focus of our county government, and that is it now. That's the focus of county government. Redevelopment, and not redevelopment so much as development. And I believe we can change that focus if we choose.
Okay, mine is a fairly straightforward question for Chris Cause and Jan Barrow. Chris, can you hear me now? I'm going to assume not. Do you support, Jan, legislation requiring fair and equal access to essential health care for transgendered persons?
Yes, I consider health care a right, and I don't care who you are, where you come from, your background, who you love, or how you identify. I support transgender people getting health care.
Okay. Bill, maybe you could repeat that question for Chris, hoping that he can hear you.
Yes, Chris. Do you support legislation requiring fair and equal access to essential health care for transgender people?
It may be that he can't hear either one.
Yes.
Okay, Bill.
Well,
You.
then I will move on. This is a question for Jared West and Robert Doyel. What is your position on counties' home rule versus the state rule on issues such as education, fracking, policing, masks, and the like?
Jared?
This is for Jared first.
Okay, so I'm actually a big supporter of home rule, and Republicans claim to be, and it's so funny, but all the time they, like last legislative session, they passed a law which removed municipal governments from being able to require new development to set aside a portion for affordable housing. They also, went against home rule to make it to where municipal government couldn't create sanctuary laws. They also went against home rule to ban municipal legislation to prevent plastic cups, plastic bags, and plastic straws. So I actually support home rule. I think we need to give municipal government back that power to be able to create laws like that, set aside, new development for affordable housing, and and so anytime a Republican tries to lie to you and tell you they like home rule, don't listen to them, because they always vote to not, to take little things away at a time, So I'm a big fan of home rule.
And Judge Doyel, the same question for you. What is your position on counties' home rule versus the state rule for issues such as education, fracking, policing, masks, and etc.?
The state preempts. That's the term, preemption, rather than state rule. State rule is. The term is preemption, and the state has been preempting all kinds of issues. Preempting meaning taking it away from the counties and the city, whereas counties and cities ought to be able to control the things that affect their community. Home rule is the way that is done. I've been speaking out on home rule issues for many years, and the advocacy I have been making is in favor of home rule. So the short answer to the question is we need to preserve, maintain home rule. But once again, it's not anything that the county commission can do. County commission really objects to the taking of their prerogatives, but the legislature in Tallahassee is what really does us in on home rule.
Thank you. And I believe I have the next question as well. Chris, can you hear us now? If not, then this question will be for Jan Barrow and Robert Doyel. In this age, we'll start with Jan. In this age of massive dissemination of lies and other misinformation over voting, how will you and other Democratic candidates for office at the federal, state, and local levels address this challenge to progressive success at the polls in November?
Well, there's a lot to address there. So you talk about the lies that's disseminated. I think that all of us have an obligation to not post and know what we're posting, and to fact check ourselves first. And I think that that's really important to make sure what we post is true and correct and comes from a credible source. So that's one thing. As far as addressing voter suppression, we need to look at how our voter rolls are being cleansed and how people standing in line to vote for extremely long hours. Those types of things are very important. I have a great confidence in our current supervisor of election, Mary Edwards. I think she's done a great job. I do think that we can pattern ourselves after states like Oregon so that we go to a complete vote-by-mail system. I don't think it's riddled with fraud, and I just think that it's a bunch of hyperbole and designed to strike incompetence. I don't even think that's a real word. designed to shatter our confidence in our election systems, which I think in this county are strong.
Thank you. And
I would say
Robert
that
Doyel.
when I teach a class as often as I can, because my population changes from time to time, about being a much more savvy news consumer, trying to get kids to realize when something is truly fake news. And, whether or not they're sponsored stories at the bottom of a news story, or being much more critical of where you get your information. And I would encourage everybody who is watching, everybody, as you go through your regular internet day, to make sure that you are always conscious of where you're gathering your information. As we get through this election, we're all going to have to do that so much more, because we are going to be bombarded by information that is not from credible sources. So it's going to be incumbent on each one of us to make sure that we are really fact checking each other, really only sending out information that is from a trusted news source. So as far as our voting goes, we're going to have to put our faith in an excellent supervisor of elections that we have in Lori Edwards. We're going to be able to increase our vote by mail, and hopefully we'll be able to win. If I might just take 10 more seconds and say that for home rule, we need to have less toll roads, which have become a de facto tax on just about everybody else in the state. We have more miles of toll roads in Florida than almost every other state. And I don't know if I missed any other ones, but those are the ones I wanted to say.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's great to have you back with us. Now, the next for Robert Doyel, I'll read the question again. In this age of massive dissemination of lies and other misinformation over voting, how will you and other Democratic candidates for office at the federal, state, and local levels address this challenge to the progressives' success at the polls in November?
Well, we do have a pretty good system in operation in Polk County because of Lori Edwards and her role as the supervisor of election. Since January the 8th, the day that Amendment 4 took effect, that is the amendment that allows convicted felons to vote, I have been publicly running campaigns, running registration events, and advocating for the use for the voting rights of felons. And in the meantime, the fake news people in Tallahassee have done everything they can to keep felons from voting. Now the law, the courts have spoken, and it seems that it is quite clear that the people who are allowed to vote by Amendment 4 really do have the right to vote. As far as what we can do locally, I think we need to make sure as many people as possible vote by mail. And we need to make clear to people who may not trust the vote by mail system that it does in fact work. And it works in Polk County because of Lori Edwards. So we can convey that message, and we should convey that message, particularly to people in the African American community who have been historically denied their rights in all sorts of ways. I think that must be my time.
Thank you. And I believe Bruce has the next question.
Instead of questions, given our time thing, I think what we need to do here is to have each candidate give a closing statement. And since not everyone can hear me, I did put it up on the chat board. Chris, have you seen this? Hopefully. And let's start with Jan, and then go to Jared, and then go to Bob, and then go to Chris. So Jan, if you would, your closing statement.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you, Bruce and Bill, for being the moderators and helping us through this. I know we've had a few technology challenges, and I'm hoping that everybody can clearly hear me. Prior to COVID, many were left out of the supposed greatest economy in the world. Voices in Lakeland were not being heard. What I want to know, are you better off than you were 5 or 10 years ago? Has your paycheck kept up with the cost of living? According to the Alice report, which is commissioned by United Way, prior to COVID, 40% of the people in Lakeland were struggling to make ends meet. And that was by design. Just look at the Florida unemployment system. It was designed to fail, and it has. 20 years of our Republican lawmakers, and specifically Rick Scott, implemented what I consider to be austerity measures on the working and the middle class, removing needed safety measures. The draconian measures have been amplified by COVID. The response has caused lives, business, and probably a slower recovery to our economy than needed to. These lawmakers have failed to listen to the people. Just look at what Florida lawmakers have tried to do with America, the Water Amendment, the Amendment 4, and look at what they did to the Forever Florida Fund and high-speed rail. Those in power in Tallahassee have willfully turned a blind eye and ignored the people to do it. My fear is once we get through the first part of COVID and we start our recovery, that the everyday people of Florida will have to bear the burden of the recovery by further sweeping cuts to services, health care, Medicaid, environmental protections, and more. We need leaders in Tallahassee who will fight for the people. We need to give the people their voice back. Vote for Jan Barrow, State Representative, House District 40 on November 3rd. Go to Jan Barrow and get involved. Together we can do this, and we can give the people a voice in Tallahassee. Thank you again.
Thanks, Jan. Jared?
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bruce, for moderating tonight. And thanks to the Polk County Progressive Caucus for putting this all together. Once again, I'm Jared West, the Democratic candidate for House District 41. I'm running because I'm just going to tell you the truth. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of watching my friends, my family, and my neighbors struggle. The people of House District 41 and in Polk County as a whole face some serious problems, and COVID-19 only exacerbates that. One would think that elected officials who've had the privilege of living here their entire lives and serving for the past, 2 terms would be acutely aware of the distresses of their constituents, but that's really not the case either. The beautiful thing, though, about this district is that as of today, we now have 6,030 more registered Democrats and Republicans here in District 41. And 28 of my 35 precincts have more Democrats than Republicans as well. That isn't enough, though, to secure winning this seat. So I'm going to need your guys' help. You can learn more about me and my plans and my platform on my website, DoyelForFlorida.com. And, I would love to have you get involved or contribute or even just talk with me. So thank you for giving me your time. You can vote for me on November 3rd. My name is Jared West.
Thank you, Jared. Bob?
My name is Bob Doyel. That's spelled D-O-Y-E-L. It's important to spell it correctly because if you're going to contribute to my campaign, you'll have to call or write, or instead of that, log on to Bob Doyel, D-O-Y-E-L, F-O-R, Polk.com. Please do that. Or follow me on Facebook at DoyelForFlorida. As far as the closing remarks are concerned, I want you to know that I am in this for the purpose of representing real human beings and taking your issues that you need addressed to heart and trying to get other people in the position of making decisions to see it our way, your way. So please, again, I want to say vote for me and go to bobdoyle.com. Bob Doyle for Polk.com. and help me pay for this campaign.
Thanks, Bob.
And thank you to everybody here. Thank you to Bruce
I believe-
and Bill for moderating. Thank you to the Polk County Progressive Caucus for hosting us tonight. It's always an honor to share the screen with my fellow candidates from Polk. Good luck to each and every one of you. I spoke earlier tonight about the history of the progressive movement in America, the turn of the 20th century. And it was once again progressive ideas that led us out of the Great Depression. And now, while we the people deal with a global pandemic that our leadership all but ignores, an economy in free fall, and unemployment rates we haven't seen since the Great Depression, this government can cover healthcare costs of a disease, can increase unemployment benefits, and can even send out cash to everyone, including 1.4 billion to dead people. Well, I say welcome to the progressive movement. Why are these ideas even considered progressive and not common sense? Coronavirus has exposed the fact that we are only as healthy as our most vulnerable. And the more people we cover with health insurance, the lower the cost is for everyone. That's not progressive. That's better fiscal management. Why are the rights of the LGBTQ plus community not just human rights, rights we should all be fighting for? Why in 2020 do we have to debate the validity of the words Black Lives Matter as though this is an either or problem? It's not either or. It's getting people to understand inequities, that Black lives matter too. I'm a history teacher, so every year I teach the Declaration of Independence and the inalienable rights that are included: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Health coverage, being able to marry the person you love without worrying about losing your job or your house, not being killed in the street, in your bed, or in your car because of the color of your skin, sending your child to school to get a great education without worrying that you're saying goodbye to them for the last time. Those are solely progressive ideals, because they sure sound like the embodiment of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness to me. If you'd like to read more about my positions, please check out chriscause.com. You can sign up to volunteer, check out my endorsements, donate to the campaign. Together, we can flip this district and teach, drive, and thrive in November. Thank you.
Thanks so much to everyone for participating this evening and for struggling through some of our technical difficulties and so on. I think you did a marvelous job. I wish you all so much luck in the future. Alice?
Thank you, Bruce. We appreciate everybody hanging in with our technical difficulties. This is new for us. It was a lot easier when we were in the commissioner's chambers 2 years ago, but we're a lot safer doing this. I should be wearing a mask, I believe. I hope that one of the issues that all of our candidates will address is the necessity for better internet infrastructure in Polk County. So hopefully that will help us in the future. But this concludes our first session with our Democratic candidates for the state offices. We appreciate very much, and thanks for taking the time to be with us this evening. In less than 15 minutes, I will introduce our candidates for the United States Congress. At exactly 7:45, we will begin our second session. So please be ready to begin then. In the meantime, I'm going to introduce Kathy Sutherland, our chair. But while you are during the intermission, you can go up in the top right of your screen and you'll see a chat, Q&A, polls, and handouts. And if you look under those tabs, you can download some of the exit surveys. And I just got one myself here, so I will do that later. But so I'm going to turn the floor over to Kathy Sutherland. Kathy, good to see you. And thanks for being with us. And please tell us what's new in Polk County.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Alice. And oh dear, I'm babysitting. I'm a grandma to 3 dogs, and so they're probably going to start barking right now. Talk about tech problems. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Polk County Progressive Caucus for putting this on. You've done a marvelous job. This is the first time it's been virtual, and so we expect a few little issues, but very well done. My name is Kathy Sutherland. I'm the chair of the Polk County Democrats. In addition to thanking the Polk County Caucus, I would like to really thank our candidates. We have outstanding candidates this time around in every single race. So we have a complete slate, which can be unusual. So no seat is going unopposed. We are going to fight for every seat. So no Republican gets a seat as a giveaway this election. And that's thanks to our candidates. Being a candidate itself is very challenging. So I appreciate their commitment to what they're doing, to the democratic values that they want to represent, because it takes so much time and energy and commitment and a little piece of themselves to be a candidate in an election like this. So I think we should appreciate that. The other thing we need to remember as voters is that it's critical to vote all up and down the ballot. We all know about the president and the kind of control that they have, but oftentimes critical decisions are made at the local and state level. Examples at the state level, look what happened in the past legislature session where they essentially gutted Amendment 4 after the majority of Floridians had voted in favor of it. And we're still battling it in the courts. They voted on the roads to nowhere. They have ignored environmental policies. I mean, there's so much that's basic values that when we have a majority Republican Congress, they can do whatever they want. So we need to get our people who represent our values need to be there. It's especially important right now because after the census, this is when they're going to be doing redistricting. So the districts that are drawn, the gerrymandering that happens or doesn't happen is going to affect our elections in Florida for the next 10 years. So again, it's critical. I know everybody on this call is probably going to vote down ballot or else you wouldn't be on this call, but tell 3 of your friends. Let's make this a social norm. Everyone needs to vote the whole ballot. Now, candidates can't do this by themselves. As some have mentioned, they need your help. They need volunteers. They need donations. And so pick your favorite candidate or pick 2 or 3, go to their websites and help them win these races. We can win a lot of these races. The candidates are doing their job. You need to do yours too. The Polk County Democrats are trying to do our job. So basically, not everybody understands who we are and what we do, but our role is try to get all of the candidates elected. And we don't just shift into gear the last few months. We are a year-round organization that's trying to build infrastructure throughout the course of the year. And we've actually been very successful this year. We have a couple of really important campaigns. We're doing a lot in terms of voter registration. We have a mailer campaign right now where we're sending mailers out to unregistered voters. And in the age of COVID, this is one of the few ways we can reach unregistered voters. But that takes dollars, basically. We've also worked really hard on vote by mail. We have volunteers who have been doing postcards, who have been doing phone banking, who have been doing texting. And guess what? It's paid off because we now have, for the first time, a greater number of Democrats registered to vote by mail than Republicans. And that's going to pay off in this election. So we also, by the way, need volunteers and need donations. So you can go to polkdemocrats.org, which is our website, and you can volunteer or donate from there. But even if those things don't work for you, please like us on Facebook, like us on Twitter and Instagram, because that's how you'll find out the new events coming along. You'll find out what all the candidates are doing. You'll find out how you can help and what kind of outreach is happening. So we need all of you to be involved. I am also very happy right now to present. Well, first of all, let me say that we haven't talked about all of the races going on tonight, because there's some nonpartisan races that are really important that are happening this August. And one of those nonpartisan races is the supervisor of elections race. And the supervisor of elections, we are so fortunate to have Lori Edwards as our supervisor. She totally opposes voter suppression. She really wants to be sure that every voter has their voice heard. And she goes to great lengths to have an efficient, capable operation that really tries to do that. And she is up for election in August. So we all need to support her if we want to continue the kind of fair elections that we have had up until this time. So I'm very happy at this time to turn the program over to a video by none other than Lori Edwards.
I'm Lori Edwards, Supervisor of Elections. You know, here in Polk County, we send out up to 100,000 vote-by-mail ballots to people in all 50 states, as well as Polk County voters all over the world. As a matter of fact, more than 50 nations. But most of those ballots, they go to Polk County voters right here at home in Polk County. And that's because more and more people are enjoying the convenience of voting in the comfort of their own home. They can take their time and do research as they're voting. They can vote when it suits them. They can wear whatever they want when they're voting. In fact, I understand some Polk County voters vote in their pajamas. So maybe you want to vote by mail. So how do you do it? It's very easy, but you do need to request. It doesn't happen automatically. The good news is there's lots of ways to request. One thing you can do is you can just pick up the phone and give us a call. Call us at 863-534-5888 during regular business hours. That's 863-534-5888, and say you want to vote by mail, and we'll take care of it from there. Or you can email us. Another easy thing to remember, it's votebymail@polkelections.com. Vote by mail at polkelections.com. If you don't want to email and you don't want to call, go to our website. That's polkelections.com. And then you just hit the vote by mail button and you just follow the directions from there. Now, if none of those sound convenient or easy enough for you, you can always go the old-fashioned way and apply on one of our paper applications. Then you fill out the form, you go ahead and mail it in or drop it by our office, and you'll be good to go. The important tip here is there's a deadline. You must request the ballot to be mailed 10 days or more before Election Day. So you can't do it last minute. So I suggest you just go ahead and do it now. That's request a mail ballot. You have up until 10 days before Election Day to do that. Now, after you request that ballot, then the fun part comes, right? Because about 30 days before Election Day, in your mail, yay, you're going to find your vote by mail ballot. Let me show you what's in the envelope so you know what to expect. Oh, I do want to remind you, just as a double check, first thing, make sure that your name is on there, not another member of your household, okay? We don't want you to grab somebody else's ballot. And in this case, it says it's Happy Mail Voter, so that's me. And we have a return envelope in here. We have the actual ballot is in here. We have the secrecy sleeve, okay? And then this we're going to use actually once we're done voting. And we have some instructions here, and guess what? This is so great. I voted sticker right here, okay? So even if you vote by mail, you get to have an I voted sticker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ballot, take a pen, blue or black pen is best, and I'm going to make my choices. Now you don't have to go this fast. You should take your time, and do remember that you don't have to vote on every race. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this ballot, I'm going to put it inside the secrecy sleeve. I told you we'd use that later. And what we do is we put it in here. It helps protect your privacy, okay? I'm going to put this in the envelope. It's already, of course, addressed back to us, so we get it. And I do want to remind you, you need to sign here. It's really important. In fact, that's why in red it says voter must sign, okay? Got to sign the envelope once you've sealed it, and then just send it back to us. You can stick it in the mail. No postage is necessary. You can bring it by to election headquarters in Bartow. You can bring it to the Election Operations Center in Winter Haven, and we have drop boxes at both of those spots. You can also bring it to one of the early voting sites, and there's 9 convenient early voting sites around the county. Don't bring it to a polling location, though. And the final reminder, and this is really, really important, be sure you work in advance so that this ballot, your ballot, gets to election headquarters by 7 p.m. on election day. That's the ultimate deadline. 7 p.m. election day, make sure your ballot is in plenty of time.
Lori Edwards, isn't she great? She's amazing. People are concerned that their vote by mail ballot isn't counted. And Lori Edwards has assured me that once the polls close at 7 o'clock on election day, the first thing they do while they're waiting for the other results to come in is tabulate the vote by mail ballots. Now, the vote by mail ballots have been counted but not tabulated, so that you can check prior to the ending of election to see if your ballot has been received. So there is no doubt that your ballot will count if it's sent by mail in Polk County. So now I want to again thanks to Bill and to Bruce for bearing with us. This has been a trying evening of technological snafus, but we're doing our best here. I think the questions were presented very well and the answers were outstanding by our candidates, so I'm very excited about that. We're going to move ahead now. Got to get the right page here and introduce that our candidates for Congress should be logging on momentarily here. And as soon as we get Bruce back on, we'll start with our second session of the evening with our U.S. congressional candidates representing districts 9, 15, and 17. I was chair of the Polk County Democratic Executive Committee a few years ago, and we had 4 congressional districts in Polk County, which is more than like 26 states in the nation. So we had a lot of congressional races to monitor at that time. But I'm just going to fill a little bit of time here. It's important that every Democrat vote this coming election, because in 2020, it's a census year. And after the census year, there is redistricting according to the number of new voters that have registered and the population growth and so on. So it's very important that people fill out their census and that they vote so that we don't get hand over control of the gerrymandering to our opponents. I think more of our candidates will be logging on, our congressional candidates. First of all, our representative, Darren Soto, is our current congressman from District 9. Adam Hattersley, who just joined us there, is running for Congress in District 15. See who pops up next. Also, Alan Cohn and Jesse Philippe are vying for that for our Democratic nomination. So pay particular attention to their responses, because at the primary in August, we will have to make a choice among these 3 gentlemen. And hopefully, here is Alan Ellison, who is joining us. He's running in our most southern districts, District 17, one of the larger congressional districts by area in the country, I'm understanding, that covers a lot of territory in the south half of Polk County and further south in the counties there. So We're waiting for Alan Cohn and Darren Soto. Darren Soto's line. I'm going to mute myself. I think it would be appropriate if we ask one of these gentlemen, maybe Alan, to introduce himself and give his 1 minute stump speech while we work on getting some of the other folks in here. I'm going to leave myself now, so.
Alan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, good evening, everyone. I'm Alan Cohn. I'm a Democrat running for Congress in the 15th Congressional District.
It works better if we have the phones off. Alan Ellison, if you would, why don't you give us your, as Ellis said, why don't you give us your stump speech? Tell us who you are, tell us where you're running, and tell us what you stand for.
Well, my name's Alan Ellison. I'm running for the United States House of Representatives to represent Florida's 17th Congressional District. I grew up in Hardee County. I was raised in Hardee County, grew up in Hardee. I worked as a barber in Polk County for 10 years. I went to Florida Southern College, graduated right before you came in, Mr. Anderson. My professor over there was Dr. Santasuso. I know you probably know him. So, I'm running because, in this particular district, we have really not had true representation in quite some time. We haven't had anyone to represent all aspects and all diversities of our district. This is the largest congressional district in the state of Florida. It covers 9 counties, and there are a lot of issues. We're talking about issues that range from protecting our waters. We have a great deal of water-related problems in Okeechobee. We have problems in Hardee County with the mines, Mosaic mines, putting tons of waste directly into our aquifer. We have problems over in Sarasota with the red tide and the blue-green algae, and our congressmen, the last 2 of them, have not done anything. In fact, one of the congressmen that I debated in 2018 said that there was absolutely nothing that could be done because these were natural occurrences. I believe that there's a lot that we can do as leaders in this country. We just have to put our collective efforts together, our resources together, and make it happen. One of the reasons that I'm running is because I believe that we need to fix our immigration system. It is absolutely appalling how these children are being torn from their parents and placed in cages. I believe that we need to secure our Social Security because members of Congress are constantly trying to attack it and redirect funds elsewhere. I believe that we should have a universal healthcare system that make it easy for people to have access to what they need, especially coming into a COVID environment. I think that we're going to have to really think long and hard about how we fix our economy because 4,300 jobs or businesses across the country are filing for bankruptcy. They're going out of business, and we're going to need to be able to replace that. There's just so many different issues now. I hope to be able to get into all of them, but my platform is simple. It is improving the quality of life for all citizens, not just the select few or not just people that are in certain parties, but for all citizens in this country. And I look forward to having a robust discussion around how we do this. And that's my message, and I approve it.
Thank you, Alan. Alan Cohn.
Well, good evening, everyone. And it's such a pleasure to join you tonight. My name is Alan Cohn, and I'm running for Congress in the 15th Congressional District. I hope at the end of this evening you'll have a clear understanding of why I'm running and how I believe my career as an investigative journalist not only makes me the best candidate to defeat Ross Spano, but also to take on the powerful forces that prevent the kind of bold change our country desperately needs. My wife, Patty, and I have raised 2 kids in the public schools. We've lived the ups and downs of an economy that doesn't work for working and middle-class families, where one illness can bust a family's budget because healthcare costs and prescription drug prices have skyrocketed while incomes haven't. Yeah, we not only need an investigative reporter in Congress who has the guts and the tools to cut through the special interests and corruption. We need a representative who doesn't try to be all things to all people. We need a congressman who will fight for what's right and has the actual record of doing just that.
Thank you, Alan. Adam Hattersley? I'm sorry, Alan.
No worries. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. I am State Representative Adam Hattersley. I currently represent State House District 59. I'm the only Democrat to win at the state level anywhere within the congressional 15th in about 20 years. And on that, the state house seat that I flipped by 12 points in 2018 used to belong to Ross Bennett. So I'm the only candidate who has experience, not just in the legislature, but in flipping Ross Bennett. I served in the United States Navy for 8 years, and in the military, you learn to focus on your mission. And in my life, my mission has been to serve in the service of others. I signed up to serve in the Navy. I volunteered for the submarine force. I volunteered to go to Iraq during the height of the war so another sailor could stay home. And in 2018, my community called and asked if I would serve again, and I answered that call by running for the Florida House. And now, with one of the most corrupt members of Congress in all of the country, in Ross Bennett, people from the community and from all over the country have called to ask if I would serve again. I never stopped this out. I'm doing this because my life has been in service. As a congressman, my mission will be to serve my constituents, my district, just like as I am doing right now in the Florida House. And I'm excited for the conversation tonight. And I'm not here to tell you why you should not vote for somebody here or somebody over here. I have respect for anybody who's ready to throw their name into the ring for public service. I'm here to tell you why I think I'm the best candidate to beat Ross Bennett and to represent you in the Florida 15th. And I hope we have a great discussion tonight, and I hope I can earn your vote. Thank you.
While we're waiting for others to join us, I believe, Bruce, you have the first question.
I do. This is for. Let's start with Adam, since Adam was last in his introduction. How will you check the major power companies and the power that they have over the U.S. government through their contributions?
That's a great question. First off, we've signed the no corporate PAC pledge for this campaign, so I'm not taking any corporate PAC money. Even during my state house campaign, we didn't raise a lot, but we were still able to win, even though we've raised more than anyone else has in this campaign ever in the history of a Democratic primary. But even with the state house campaign, you do take money from corporations and lobbyists. But if you look at my voting record, I have a 100% score for putting people before corporations in Tallahassee. That just shows that it doesn't matter who donates to my campaign. It doesn't matter where the money is. What matters is my set of values and morals. And I voted the right way every time. I'm the only one with that record. I'm excited to move that record forward, but I'm also ready to help push legislation and champion legislation to help get big money out of elections. I think some of the other candidates can agree with me. Raising money is not what candidates need to be doing, not what members of Congress need to be doing. We need to be focused on serving our constituents. That's what I plan on doing. That's what I have done in the Florida House.
Okay, the question would also go to Jesse Philippe, but I'd like, Jesse, if you would, for you to do your introduction first, if you would. You have a 1-minute introduction since you joined us a little bit late.
Thank you, Bruce. I apologize about the difficulties we worked on there, and all of a sudden it stopped working. I don't know what happened there. My name is Jesse Philippe. I'm running to be your next congressman in District 15. Background of myself is I've been in this community for 20 years. I played football at King High School. I joined the military, served 6 years. I deployed to Iraq. I fought for my country. I came back. I worked in the public sector. I worked in the Department of Children and Families to help single mothers. I worked in the Department of Revenue, which also aided single mothers. I also work in the state attorney's office, where I help build our great state attorney, Andrew Warren, initiatives so that we can help different things such as abuse of women and different initiatives such as that. My life has been a life of public service. I believe that if you elect someone, you need to have experience in public service, because we've spent the last 4 years of having businessmen run our country, and this is the wrong way to go. I believe that public service is the way to go. You need leaders who have experience in it, who have life experience, and I believe I'm that candidate. So that's a brief introduction of who I am.
Okay, and the question actually goes to something that you had in the introduction. How will you check the the power major corporations have over the U.S. government through their contributions?
I'm sorry, Bruce. It's a noise. All right, that question is geared towards me.
Well, here, I'll repeat it for you. How will you check the power that major corporations have over the U.S. government through their contributions?
Okay, so how you address that is by investing in people. If you look at Bernie Sanders' campaign, you really go, and AOC's campaign, you see there's a lot of grassroots movement. A lot of small volunteers are coming out and saying, we want corporate PAC money to be removed from our elections. I believe if you have an inspiring message that gets people out to vote, people will donate. Our campaign, we don't have a big fundraiser. We just have people who believe in us. And that's how we're able to raise a lot of that money. And I believe that, honestly, that's the best way you combat corporate PAC money. You have a lot of corporations who are involved in politics, but guess what? They don't vote. So you can raise as much money as you want to, as long as you have a message, people vote. And that's the best way to combat and fight our money in politics.
Alan Cohn, would you like me to repeat the question? Or
No, I got it. You know, it's a great question because our campaign finance system is broken and corporations exert incredible influence on the political system, and why so many major issues like taxing, climate change, and healthcare aren't getting done. Corporations should not be able to make political contributions, period. There needs to be strict rules on lobbying. And additionally, we need to close the revolving doors in terms of government officials who become lobbyists. And we should also ban corporate super PACs. One interesting note that I want to share with you, and I know this because of my broadcast on ABC, where I would have a nightly roundtable with Republicans and Democrats. And by talking to the Republicans, I know full well they raise money differently than us Democrats. They do not make the hundreds of phone calls that we have to make every day to get people to contribute to our campaign, large and small. They're getting those corporate PAC checks. They are getting large checks funneled through super PACs and the Koch brothers and the Plug for Growth and so on. Unless you are a Mike Bloomberg, you have to do this. And you know what? Yes, we should not be taking corporate money. And I'm glad that Adam says he no longer will do that, because when he was in the legislature, he did take money from Chico. And corporations like that do not give money to lawmakers or candidates for nothing. They want something done, and Washington is flooded with that money, and it's going to be a priority of mine to help work for a campaign, a finance system that represents all of us and not just the most wealthy Americans.
Okay, Bill, I think you have a question for all candidates.
Yes, I do. I believe we'll start with Alan Edison. I beg your pardon, Alan Ellison. It's more or less a yes or no question. Do you support legislation that would ban former members of Congress from becoming lobbyists?
I would support legislation from banning former members of Congress from becoming lobbyists. I believe that the entire system needs to be reformed, and oftentimes lobbyists are getting the things that they want to get through because they have major corporations behind them, and it creates a very unfair system. And the people who usually have the most financial resources are usually the people who levy their will upon other members of Congress. And so whenever you're in Congress, you get a chance to make a lot of friends, and then oftentimes they leverage those relationships in such a way that it creates a unfair, equitable situation. So yeah, of course I do. I support that.
I believe the next one, we will go to Jesse Philippe. And the question again is, do you support legislation that would ban former members of Congress from becoming lobbyists?
Of course, I believe that Money is driving a divide in America. It's driving a divide in our politics. And lobbyists acting on behalf of corporations make politicians not true to their constituents. And that's the problem. I believe that we need to ban it. We need to make sure that there's no more insider network of getting things passed and leaving the middle person and the lower class out of the economy and out of the government. I believe that we need to start investing in people. One of the reasons why I got in this race, because I felt as if our politics has moved away from people and moved more towards the big money and getting big corporations in power. That's on both sides. And I believe that it's time that we start investing in our middle class. And that's why I got in this race. And I'll be 100% certain that I will pass legislation to ban lobbyists after they leave Congress.
Thank you. Next to Adam Hattersley. Do we need to repeat the question or?
That was a simple question, simple answer. Yes, we need to ban former members of becoming lobbyists. We took some steps in the state of Florida. Originally, it was a 2-year cooling off period. We've increased that to 6 years, but that's not enough. And we need to take action on a federal level. So yes, that's what to ban former members from becoming.
Thank you. And Alan Kahn.
Well, that's also a great question. And I've spent a great deal of time throughout my career drawing the lines between money in politics and votes in the legislature. The fact is that members of Congress can make millions of dollars as lobbyists after serving Congress. And that has a corrosive effect on our politics and our democracy. And just, serving in Congress should not necessarily be a lifelong thing. The fact of the matter is, it is a corrupt process up in Washington and in Tallahassee when lawmakers can go from one thing to the other. Part of the problem is that the lobbyists then become more powerful than the members of Congress because they control not only what bills are brought up in the legislature, but in many cases, they are writing those bills because the members of Congress are not. And that is something that we have to end.
Thank you. I believe, Bruce, you have the next question.
Yes, and this is also for all candidates, and I'll start with Jesse Philippe. Has your campaign accepted money from the Blue Dog PAC? Yes or no?
Have our campaign accepted money from which organization?
From the Blue Dog PAC.
No.
Blue Dog PAC.
No, we're a progressive campaign, and that is not money we accept.
Adam?
You know what? I have been endorsed by the Blue Dog Coalition, and yes, we have accepted money from them. Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy is a great leader in Congress. So is Congressman Charlie Crist. And I think we all know this district has been Republican for several decades. And the district needs to know that whoever is representing them, one, is morally sound, two, is ready to look out for everybody, but three, is also ready to listen to both sides of the aisle. And we have a policy in my office in Tallahassee. We never turn down a meeting. Doesn't matter if I agree with the person or not. I'm ready to listen to everybody because that's why we're there. The Blue Dog Coalition, they understand that this district is traditionally been a little bit more red than blue, but that doesn't mean we can't fight for our values and our morals, and that's what I'm ready to do. And we're not going to be able to do that. All these things, great things we're going to talk about tonight, we have been talking about, we're not going to be able to do unless we win. And the way to win is to show that you're able to talk to everybody in this district. It's how several young veterans who have served before were able to flip Trump districts in 2018. That's why I've been working with the Blue Dog Coalition. They've been working specifically with me because I fit that profile to be able to flip a Trump district and get some of these Democratic votes back where they need to be, representing our values.
Colin Cohen. Okay. I'm sorry, repeat the question. The question is, has your campaign accepted money from the Blue Dog PAC? Yes or no?
No, and I wouldn't accept it if it was offered. Look, it's really kind of important to understand when the increase in the minimum wage from $15 an hour came up for a vote in the House just this past year. The only members of the Democratic Caucus to vote against it were the most conservative members of the Democratic Caucus. It's important to remember that when President Obama was trying to pass the Affordable Care Act, that because of those conservative members of the Democratic Caucus, the Affordable Care Act did not go nearly as far as it needed it to go, which is why there is so much that we need to fix and improve today. It's important to remember that when the economy went into the Great Recession in 2008, it was the most conservative members of the Democratic Caucus that presented that were against a stimulus bill that was large enough to turn around the economy and create jobs as quick as it needed to be. This is the difference between being a progressive Democrat and those who are not. We've seen what has happened played out over the last 8 years. So to repeat my answer again, no, I would not accept that money, even if it was offered to me.
So, Ellen Ellison?
I have not received any money from Blue Dog PAC.
Okay, the next question is for the candidates for Congressional District 15. Adam Hattersley, Jesse Philippe, and Alan Kahn, and we'll start with Adam Hattersley. What role should the federal government take in national emergencies, such as the COVID-19? Should it leave it to the states, or should it assume the lead for all states?
Now, that's a great question. So we have precedent in this in our country. At times of major national crisis, the Great Depression in the 20s, 30s, and early 40s, World War II, and now we're facing it again. And in those times, the federal government had to step up to make sure that the whole country came together and responded as one to face the crisis. That's what we're missing right now. We've seen this work for other countries, New Zealand, Australia, South Korea, several European countries. They've had success by having a national unity and not a piecemealed type of response. This piecemeal response that we have seen here in the United States has skyrocketed the number of COVID cases, does not flatten the curve in any way, shape, or form. And all it's doing is serving to prolong this crisis and make it a regional crisis beyond national. So there are times during national emergency when the federal government does need to take the lead with certain measures, and this is a time for that. And I'm very, very disappointed in our state's leadership right now with our piecemeal response, and it really is making this this crisis worse and prolonging it and prolonging the economic hardship. We need to come together, and that's one thing that we can advocate for, or I can advocate for once I get to Washington, by not just leadership in Washington, but by leading by example. And I'm actually glad you guys chose to do this event virtually, because it is leading by example, and that's what we need to do.
And the question now goes to Jesse Philippe. Do I need to repeat the question, because I noticed you went out for a moment?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes. What role should the federal government take in national emergencies, such as the current COVID-19? Should it leave it to the states, or should it assume the lead role for all states?
It should be a leader for all states. The problem is you do have laws that kind of restrict the federal government in certain aspects, but they can't control some of the state decisions. But they can be a leader. One of the most powerful things about the federal government is leading by example. And there's been a lack of leadership, and a lack of, I would say, morality issues leadership. We have a lot of politicians now that are currently leading us who think of, their constituent, their base of voters, and that's how they're making their decision. It's wrong. And for me, I believe leadership is speaking when you are the most afraid to speak. Like, for example, I said I was progressive when I began this round of COVID theory when I entered the campaign, and I continue to be a progressive as we kept going on. And I believe in progressive idealism. I didn't switch. I didn't say I was a moderate. I didn't switch and say that, I'm a progressive now. I stay consistent because I believe that a progressive message is one that focuses on how do we make the person who's in the middle class stronger. And COVID has been attacked. They've been attacked night in and night out with regulations, lack of funding and financial, lack of health resources, lack of mass coverage. All these things hurt the middle class. And I believe that a progressive idea is the best way to help that. Best way to give public option healthcare, to make sure that we fund people who can't afford healthcare. So these are the things that you have to stay consistent with a progressive message. You can't keep flip-flopping. You have to stand by what you believe. And that's one of the things that you get from me. And I believe that's what we need to do on the national level.
Thank you. And Alan Kahn, what role should the federal government take in national emergencies, such as the current COVID-19? Should it leave it to the states, or should it assume the role of leadership for all states?
Looks like we have the requisite Zoom call. You're on mute, Alan.
Can you hear me now?
We got you.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. The answer to your question is yes, because Americans today are dying because of the lack of leadership on the federal level. And just look at the trend lines. New York had the epicenter of this, and because of strong action, the number of infections and deaths are down incredibly. Look at the trend line in Florida, which closed the state late, opened it too early, and now we are seeing an incredible spike in people getting sick and dying again. But beyond that, it's essential to provide economic relief to Americans impacted by the effects of the pandemic. The federal government should be sending monthly checks to every single person in the country, and that we help subsidize the payroll of every single business in the country that has been infected by the pandemic. And the president should have mobilized the federal government to deal with coronavirus from the very beginning. But instead, he ignored scientific warnings and downplayed the threat, claiming it was no worse than the flu. And Trump should never have dismantled the pandemic response team from the National Security Agency or Council. That's absolutely incredible. And the president needs to invoke the Defense Production Act to make tests and have PPA. And also there needs to be a federal response and plan in terms of contact tracing, which the scientists say is the only way to really get ahead of what's happening right now, because again, there's been no federal leadership.
Thank you. And I believe, Bruce, you have the next two questions for Alan Ellison.
I do. Alan, what would you do to ensure that seniors and people with disabilities who have few transportation options during this pandemic get access to emergency transportation, food, and mental health services if needed?
Thank you for the question. Inside of Congressional District 17, there are over 150,000 people living with a disability. In the United States, there's over 61 million people living with a disability. And it's one of the issues that we don't really get a chance to focus on. I actually talk a lot about it being the sleeping giant in the room. What I would like to do is to make sure that the disability benefits that are currently in place be expanded. And we need to make sure that there is legislation in place to take care of these individuals, especially in times of crisis like what we're dealing with the pandemic. I believe that we will get a lot of argument on the Republican side of this equation, because it has been the Republicans that have been constantly trying to take away funding from the disability system. And so it's a good thing that we have more Democrats in the House, but we need more Democrats in the Senate to have the strength that we need in both houses to not only protect disability benefits, but expand them to be able to take care of transportation, and medical needs, as well as increased funding to help them get by from day to day. It's one thing that I always want to let people know is that when we're dealing with disability and an aging community, it's something that could literally affect anyone from any walk of life. You don't have to be just a Democrat. You could be a Republican and walk out and get hit by a car and become disabled and need the benefits that our government should be able to provide. I think that we spend way too much money in defense. In fact, we're spending more money in defense than every country in the world with the military combined. And a lot of that defense money is not going to the military, it's going to defense contractors. So I think that if we were to streamline our defense budget, we could actually take care of those programs that actually give a better quality of life for not only our seniors, but also our Americans living with disabilities.
Okay. Also for Alan Ellison. Alan, do you support legislative reforms that will require police departments to hire officers reflective of the demographic makeup of the jurisdictions that they patrol?
Absolutely. And not only that, I believe that we need to have police officers be trained in being able to recognize various aspects of our community. Like, for example, there have been times where law enforcement officers have gone to situations only to try to assert their authority over someone who literally could not hear them. They had a disability, couldn't hear. And because they were seen as non-compliance, they then got handled and treated really rough. So you have people that have disabilities, you have people that have autism who don't process information the same. You have people that have physical disabilities who may not can get on the ground or get on their knees and things of that nature. So I believe that we should definitely redirect a lot of the funding, have an accountability system to oversee how those funds are spent, and make sure that law enforcement officers have the training that they need to not only represent a diverse demographic, but also be able to understand the complexities of us humans and how we show up in this world.
Bill, over to you.
Yes, the next questions are for the candidates for Congressional District 15, Philippe Alencon and Adam Hattersley. And we will start with Alencon. The question is, should policing methods in America be reformed? Or do you think that some police funding should be shifted to community-based services to take over some of the public service needs that are now used by the police department?
Well, the question, the answer to your questions are yes. I mean, look, under the Obama administration, they started a program throughout the Justice Department to go into local police departments and work with local departments in terms of holding officers accountable and changing methods and community policing. We have to hold police officers accountable and get rid of qualified immunity, but ban no-knock warrants and change the use of false standards, ban chokeholds, and establish a national registry of misconduct by law enforcement officers. And we need states to require and use of force reports to the Department of Justice and racial bias training. We have to have more extensive training for police officers. The fact is, in Florida, barbers have more training than police officers. And yes, the other part of that is for too many years, we have asked our police officers to do too many things. And we need other agencies, and we have to reimagine what law enforcement is in this country to take some of the burdens off of police officers in areas that they are or equipped to handle, and put that into other agencies and those professionals who are trained to do those things. And in the bottom line, we also need in our urban communities better jobs, because better jobs mean that more people will be employed, crime will be down, and there will be less need for the numbers of police in those communities. And yes, in response to the last question, police departments need to be reflective of the communities that they serve.
Thank you. Jesse Philippe, should policing methods in America be reformed, or do you think that some police funding should be shifted to community-based services to take over some public safety needs now performed by the police?
To answer your question, yes, to both questions. I only can speak to my life experience and on this issue. And for me, someone who has encountered with the police, good and bad, because I did serve in the Marines. A lot of the people I serve with are police officers currently. So I understand there are very good police officers. And there are bad police officers, because I've walked in the streets, I've lived in an urban environment, so I understand that they're bad cops. When we're talking about allocating resources away from police funding and investing in our communities, that is the most basic principle we should do. That's the starting point. Because a lot of crime, like I worked at the state attorney's office, so a lot of crime that I saw was really just of people having a lack of, understanding of what they're doing. Because people, when they go into the justice system, you see they just have a lack of understanding of the Constitution, what their rights are, and they don't understand that. And these are the things that we need to do to make sure that we fix that problem. I spoke with our State Attorney Andrew Warren about this issue, and I told him that one of the things that I believe that is crucial is that we have more prosecutors available at our local high schools, talking to our young students, talking to our collegiate students, informing them on their rights. By doing that, we're having a conversation and we're informing citizens what's okay with police officers, what's not okay with police officers. And I believe that that's the first step. Our funding needs to go into funding that program, and we need to also go funding. We also need to adopt the House bill that just passed, the Policing Act. That is the most crucial. These are the fundamental steps that we need to do. By adopting that, we're talking about local leaders joining a civilian board to keep police accountable. Doing the accountability of police is the most crucial thing. I mean, when I was in the Marines, there's nothing I didn't do that my sergeant or someone higher than me wasn't aware of. These are the things that needs to happen more, and we need to keep police accountable. And I believe that if we divert these funds away from more militarization of our police officers, then we can tackle the issue of police injustices in America. Because I believe that that's what's happening. We're shifting our resources in the wrong direction. We're becoming more militarized, and we're doing less policing, and that's the problem. There's no reason why a tank is on the road of 301. And when I had to deal with tanks in Iraq, those type of tanks do not belong in the United States policing force, and it shouldn't be there. And we should take those funds and invest in our people and make sure that we have programs to help people with mental health issues and different issues that can make sure that we close the gap of injustices in America. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam Hattersley, should policing methods in America be reformed, or do you think that some police funding should be shifted to community-based services to take over some public safety needs now performed by police?
Now, we absolutely, the past couple of months, if they have not already taught us, and these past couple of months have taught us, we absolutely need to have policing reforms in the United States. And the Policing Act that Jesse mentioned is a great first step. Right-sizing the police force and demilitarizing the police force and holding them accountable are going to be some of the next steps. I know Jesse mentioned it, but for example, in Plant City, which is right here in the 15th district, they bought a big armored RV thing, kind of like that thing at the beginning of the Die Hard movie. They bought that instead of funding police body cams. Now, which is going to going to be holding the police more accountable? Is it going to be, as Jesse mentioned, a tank, which is there for intimidation and force and aggression, or body cams, which are there to protect the citizens as well as the police? You know, I saw some pictures of this vehicle they bought, and it was more up-armored than the up-armored Humvee I drove on combat missions in Iraq. That is not what we need driving on our streets. So we definitely need to reform policing in this country, make the police force look like the community that it is policing. They've had great success with this in some other states, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel here in Florida, and we can take some of that lead in the federal government to put some of these frameworks in place to make these reforms and make them correct and make it so it becomes much more equitable and more just and more accountable all across the board.
Thank you.
Okay, these are also questions for Alan, Adam, and Jesse. Let's start with Jesse. How would you improve access to broadband internet so that parents and children have an alternate way to continue their education at home if they do not feel comfortable returning to public schools in August?
That's a great question. I worked for a number of years in a telecommunication company, Verizon. One of the biggest issues that we faced was expanding broadband access. The FCC has tried to regulate this by give CAF2 funding to our local rural areas. That hasn't been enough. The infrastructure, the technology, it's hard to run internet in rural areas. And so there's been a development in 5G investment. And the 5G investment, what it allows you to do is allows you to put these little cells into everyone's home. And by doing that, that provides internet access. This is a great program because this helps minorities the most because they're more cost affordable and they help get internet to the homes when it doesn't cost very expensive for the companies to do it. The problem that we're having is how do we bring the 5G network into this area and run it? You know, a lot of companies say, well, we don't want to run these kind of technologies into these areas, these rural areas, because it's too expensive. So this is where the federal government comes in. We understand there's a technology divide amongst minorities, and what we can do is provide funding to the telecommunication companies so that they can provide access to low-income and middle-class people who cannot afford the 5G access. We have to face it. We're in a new time, and COVID-19 is going to be more and more people in the home and less people are out. If we don't find a way to make sure that we provide internet access to people without the means to do it, we're going to have such an unequal distribution of wealth in America that we think it's scary now. It's going to be even more scarier if we don't do something now on the federal government level. And that's why I believe that we need to provide funding to these telecommunication companies, especially the CAF2 funding, and expand that so that it makes sure more broadband access is applied to the rural communities of our district.
Adam?
COVID crisis and people staying at home, especially our kids that are in school, has really shown this glaring disparity, this internet divide in rural and underserved communities more than ever. Our kids are falling behind in school when they don't have access to the internet or don't have computers at home. So bringing these internet services to our underserved communities, to our rural communities, especially in rural Polk County and even in Lakeland proper, where I know this has been an issue for several years, is going to be key to helping not just weather the COVID crisis, but give opportunity for people to work and live in this new environment of coronavirus and this new work from home environment. This pandemic is changing. It's, to use a buzzword from the 90s, it's a paradigm shift of how companies work. There's going to be much more work from home. There's going to be much more learning from home, Florida virtual schools. And we have to expand these infrastructure availability, especially again to our rural and underserved communities, just like there in Polk County, because that is what is going to be leading in the future and letting our small businesses, letting our big businesses, and letting our kids stay involved in the economy and in their education. So yes, absolutely, we have to increase funding to install this critical infrastructure right here in the Florida 15th, because we are behind when it compared to urban districts, and we need to catch up.
Alan?
You know, this is something that Congressman Darren Soto has been talking about for a long time in our area. In fact, I was with him a couple of months ago before the pandemic in Lakeland when he talked about all the underlying advantages we have in terms of brains and companies and manpower in Polk County. You know, the reality is this cannot and should not be a partisan issue, because right now this is not only an issue that is affecting urban areas in our community, it's affecting areas in rural America where, you know, in many ways, college kids were able to come home and finish their college courses online, and in many communities, youngsters who are K through 12 were able to complete their courses online at home. But as my two colleagues just talked about, the fact is in inner city neighborhoods, residents and children don't have access to both the computers and the bandwidth. Bottom line is the federal government needs to subsidize new broadband infrastructure. And like Jesse said, this is an issue of economic justice, and it's an issue of you know, educational equity. So this is something that the Congress definitely has to work on, and hopefully after the next election, we are going to have a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic President to start, you know, not just in terms of words, but into action. So the next time that we face something like this, you know, we're not, you know, your ability to get an education during an emergency like this is not based upon what community you live in or your economic ability to pay for it on your own.
So,
And for Congressional District 17, Alan Ellison, what is your position on fracking, both on the land in Florida and along the state's coastal waterways?
I am absolutely against fracking and along the coast. I'm against fracking in Florida in general. You know, we are in a unique state as we are a peninsula. We are surrounded by water, but also the fact that our aquifer is in trouble. We definitely don't need to be doing any fracking whatsoever. If you notice, there are like around Florida in various spots of Florida, we have a great deal of sinkholes that are popping up. Our ground is unstable. Every year, the coast goes underwater. I think it goes underwater about something like 2 feet every year. We are in a situation where we need to move away from fracking fossil fuels and start to really take an interest into green technologies and how we move forward with that, because those outdated methods of trying to generate energy, it's not only hurting our ecology, but it's hurting our climate because of the fuel emissions that are emitted from fracking and all of the oil and natural gas processing plants and stuff like that. So, you know, we just need to really take a look at the green solutions and move forward in an efficient way. Because if we don't, we're going to continue to destroy not only our land, but our water and our air. And we can't afford that. We have to look out for our children and our children's children.
Thank you. Bruce?
well, I'm getting the word from our overseers that we need to start moving toward a closing statement. So I think that maybe now is the time. We're going to have these conversations clearly for some weeks to come, and hopefully we'll be able to get more information from you as we all go forward. And I hope to hear from all of you. I'd like to start, I think, with Alan Ellison on a closing statement. Tell us why we should be electing you in the 17th.
Thank you very much for hosting this event tonight. It's been very productive. Again, my name is Alan Ellison, and I'm running for the United States House of Representatives to represent Florida 17th Congressional District. The reason I am running is because when I look around and I see all of the issues that take place, not only in the Congressional District of 17, but across the state and across the country, I can't help but desire to want to make positive change. The progressive agenda has always been about improving the quality of life for all people. And somewhere along the lines, the Republicans have done a very good job of distorting and putting out misinformation about who we are as a party. And I want to make sure that we are consistent in our message of unity, consistent in our message of love, and most definitely consistent in our message of making sure that the people understand that we are the party that is all about improving the quality of life for everyone. And that looks very comprehensively. It means that we are going to make sure that families are coming back together. It means that we build bridges and not walls. It means that we are securing a better life for our citizens who live with disabilities. It means that we make sure that we are expanding Social Security. It means that we are providing opportunity and access to a world-class healthcare system. It means that we are looking out for our veterans and making sure that they are not committing suicide at the rate of 23 deaths per day. It means that we are putting measures into place to secure our economy because of the jobs that we have lost due to COVID-19 and the rise of some of our internet-based businesses that are putting a great deal of pressure on our brick and mortar businesses. It means that we're streamlining the Small Business Administration to make it easier for small business owners, who are the backbone of our economy, to get access to the funding that they need to go out and start businesses and hire more workers. I believe that we need to make sure that we are protecting women's right to choose, and that we are making sure that they are safe for the ones who are locked up and incarcerated, because there are a lot of women in these prisons that are being violated and taken advantage of. We have to make sure that our law enforcement officers are held to a higher standard and are made to be accountable. We have to make sure that people understand that while all lives matter, there is a precedent and a history in this country that is very rich, that is making Black people in this country feel less than. We need to make sure that these individuals understand that they are loved, that they are respected, and that their lives matter also. And when we talk about improving the quality of life, it means that we have true representatives that are in Congress that are truly representing all people. Too oftentimes we have people go off to represent themselves in their own interests. We need to make sure that we have representatives that are representing the interests of the people. I'm Alan Ellison. You can find me at ellisonforcongress.com. Make sure you contribute something to all of these candidates, because we are living in COVID times. We're not able to get out and campaign the traditional ways, and a lot of our campaigns have gone strictly digital. And the only way to reach people is through these internet broad-based systems. And if you live in a rural district like myself and a lot of other Democrats across the country, sometimes that can be very difficult, especially with some of the internet connections not working so good. As you see tonight, we've had some internet connectivity issues, but we can get beyond that with investments, not only into our infrastructure, our technological infrastructure, but also into our campaigns to make sure that we have the best possible technology to reach citizens with our messages, and make sure that they understand that there are real candidates out here fighting for their rights, for their issues that are most dear to them. Again, my name is Alan Ellison. Thank you very much, and I approve this message.
Adam Hattersley.
Thank you so much for hosting us tonight. I am, again, State Representative Adam Hattersley. You can find us at hattersleyforcongress.com or on all the socials at HattersleyForFL, Hattersley FORFL. I have experience in a legislature. I've experience in public service, 8 years in the United States Navy, a combat tour in Iraq. I'm even on the Selective Service Board, and I have been for several years. I'm the only one that has the experience in this district to win, and I have proven that I can win as the only Democrat who has done that in about 20 years here in this district. My record, look up my voting record in Tallahassee. I always put people before corporations, and I use my morals to guide where I vote and how I vote. And you can ask anybody in the legislature where I stand, and my honesty and integrity is not questioned across the state. I'm ready to continue the fight that I've done in Tallahassee and Washington for public education, for voting rights, for women's reproductive health, for LGBT rights, and equal rights across the board. I do want to say thank you again so much for hosting this, Bruce and Bill. I think Ellis is in the background somewhere. You guys did a great job. I appreciate the opportunity to get to know more of the voters in the Lakeland area, since as Mr. Ellison said, we are kind of stuck on our computers here at home. But I am committed, no matter what happens on August 18th, we need to make sure everybody gets out to vote. I do hope that I will be able to earn your vote. But regardless of what happens, and so far I've been the only candidate to say this, on August 19th, I'm going to be out there trying to flip this district blue if I win the primary or not, no matter what. We flip the Florida 15th blue, and I need all of your help to do that. We flip Central Florida blue, and we flip the entire state of Florida blue. If we do that, we flip the White House. This is a critical district to flip. And I appreciate the opportunity to get to meet more of you. And I'm available to talk to anybody. Our number is 813-213-4353 or adam@hattersleyforcongress.com. We need everybody's help. I appreciate the time. Thank you all so much, and we will see you all soon.
Alan Kahn.
Well, I hope you all have a clearer picture of the choices before you. The question isn't whether Ross Fannin needs to go. We all agree on that. He's a cheater and he's a disgrace. The question is, who has the best tools to beat him? And what are you replacing him with? I didn't become a Democrat just to run for office. I don't run for Congress like it's some kind of calling. I'm running because my wife Patty and I and our children care for you and your families, and we want to be part of the solution when it comes to building a fairer, more prosperous economy for all of us. We're taking bold action to deal with climate change that threatens our entire planet, and to be that voice and that vote for reforming a criminal justice system that doesn't treat all of us equally. Shedding light on the problems that plague our community is something I have done my entire career. Finding answers and solutions and bringing about real change is what I've done my entire adult life. And it's what I'm going to do in Congress. So thank you.
Thanks, Al. And the final word tonight goes to Jesse Philippe.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I'm very humbled to be here. And I want to thank you guys for giving me an opportunity to speak. I just want to tell the voters why me. When I got in this race, almost a year ago. And I didn't announce that I was going to actually fully run this race until I talked to people of this district. I've talked to people in this district. I've been here for 20 years. I've fought in Iraq in the Marine Corps. I've fought for people in this district, the Department of Children and Families. I've fought for this district, the Department of Revenue. I've constantly fought for this district. What I'm going to do when I get to Congress is focus on you. A lot of congressmen talk about themselves. They're more concerned about, I'm being recruited, I'm this, I'm that. It's less about you. When you talk to me, I always focus on what can I do to make your life better? Most people say they're struggling with healthcare. I came out with a plan that talked about having a public option. People are telling me they don't have infrastructure, they don't have internet in their home. Well, I came up with a plan that talked about how do we invest in an eco-friendly infrastructure so that people have access to the internet. I've constantly listened to people in this district. I've constantly went in this district. I spoke to you guys. I understand what you need. When you're electing someone, when you're voting for someone in the booth, understand that they need to understand who you are, understand your value system, understand what's important to you and your family. I've done that. I've done the research. I've talked to you. I'm going to do that for you. I'm asking for your vote because I'm the champion. I fought for many, many years for things and I've won. The reason why I won is because I always had a common goal, and that's people. And I'm going to continue to do that. If you vote for me, I want you to come out August 18th. Primary day is so important. This election is going to be an election that changes America. We're talking about changing the infrastructure, talking about changes in healthcare. This is the most important election of a lifetime. I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for your support. Please go to jessephilippe.com, JESSEPHILIPPE.com. I am counting on you. And yeah, Adam's right. If Adam wins or Alan wins, guess what? I'm going to be there fighting for them. Because at the end of the day, Ross Panel does have to go. Donald Trump has to go by any means necessary. And I will continue to do that fight. And I will continue to fight for this district, and I will continue to fight for these people, for us. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jesse. And thanks to everyone who's participated tonight, especially my partner, Bill, who has weathered the storm of 2 hours, and all of our candidates for putting yourselves out there. Not everybody has that kind of guts. Ellis?
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Bill. We've had a tremendous evening of answers. I hope that the technology was able to allow everybody to hear them. I do want to particularly, again, thank our candidates for stepping up and upholding our progressive values by running for these prestigious offices. Our representative, Darren Soto, apologizes. He tried several times. He's in the Capitol and in the halls. He couldn't get a Wi-Fi signal strong enough to enable him to allow us. Thanks, everyone. Again, Bill, Bruce, so much appreciate your bearing with us, and we hope we did the voters in our county some good service tonight.
Thank you.
So, thanks again.